All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, all. Thank you for joining our Founder Institute series. My name is Bill, and along with Don and Juan, we are some of the local leaders for Founders Institute in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Princeton. Together, we have over 30 years of experience in the startup ecosystem, and we're proud to provide education and support to the next generation of startups. Today, I want to tell you a little bit about our accelerator, and then we're going to roll right into the presentation by some of our local mentors. There will be time for Q&A, so please use the Q&A feature, the chat feature, queue up your questions for us. We're hoping to make this super engaging. Please add your LinkedIn to the chat if you want us to post for networking with any of the other participants. So who are we? So Founder Institute in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Princeton is about 3 years old. We have over 100 mentors and have graduated over 20 founders through our intensive program. To graduate, a founder needs to be committed to their company and ready to scale. FI is hard, and for those that drop, they're still supported through FI's programming and can stay connected to our mentor network. Great founders find a way. FI fits in a perfect spot. Our focus is on providing individualized expertise, a structured framework, and experienced mentors to help founders know what they don't know. There are many programs and tools to educate. FI takes that to the next level with a Navy SEALs type program to create fundable enterprises. Our reputation for graduating quality over quantity puts people on the fast track to funding sources. The list of local and global graduates is impressive. You can learn more at fi.co. FI has a proven selection process, our entrepreneurial DNA assessment, to admit founders, not your idea, to the program. The local chapter, following FI's intensive curriculum, provides the connections and skills needed to help you build a scalable growth company. Many of our mentors are FI graduates. Others have exited, and their goal is your success. In Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Princeton, we've tapped into an extensive local mentor network. Mentors host office hours, present on various topics, and become an important source of feedback to you. We constantly add and subtract mentors to provide quality support and encourage all mentors to include the depth of their network. In addition, FI has an extensive global mentor network to give an even greater perspective and value to the cohort. Mentors are rewarded through the Equity Collective, but only if they add value to your experience. You can see the listing of our mentors at fi.co/Philadelphia, fi.co/Pittsburgh, and fi.co/Princeton. We run the core program, and the program's designed to meet founders' needs based on their stage. Founder Lab, or Funding Lab, would be the next step for most graduates, and our goal is to prepare founders for that step. After Funding Lab, companies are matched through our venture network to funding sources. The FI Venture Network is growing daily through the global commitment of sourcing quality VCs, as well as the proven caliber of our graduates. FI is dedicated to the startup ecosystem. All local leaders go through an intensive development program. It's called Accelerator Lab. Our VC Lab program launches VC firms and has its own accelerator to help build careers in venture financing. FI in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Princeton is committed to your success. What attracted me most to FI was my own interactions with founders. Many were missing key knowledge in company building, and they didn't have the bench strength of key advisors. I'm grateful that Don introduced me to the program, and together we are continuing to grow the Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Princeton programs to meet the needs of the founders and the mentors. Now, on to the program. So I first want to introduce one of our panelists, Seth. So feel free, Seth, to take it away.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. This is going to be a fun chat amongst myself and Alfred Poor and Dave Schneider. We all have had lots of experience with podcasting. I've been doing it for like 12 years now, I think, last time I calculated. Dave is the head honcho, the chief bottle washer over Philly Tech Entrepreneurs. and he has a great podcast where he introduces and interviews, guess what, tech entrepreneurs in the Philadelphia area, and it's great. And Alfred is the chief bottle washer of the 75% solution. He is the king of making your video look great. I mean, his knowledge is beyond anything I can even grasp. So, definitely connect with us on LinkedIn. A little bit about me. I've been a digital marketer for close to 16 years, almost 17, come to think of it. Do everything from websites, SEO, podcast coaching, I said SEO, SEO, digital marketing, social media, and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to introduce you to Dave, who's I think at the bottom of the screen here. And Dave, take it away.
Thanks a lot for the intro, Seth. Excited, happy to be here supporting Founders Institute. Just a great program in the Philadelphia area that I've come to know through my involvement with Philly Tech Entrepreneurs. I'm the organizer of that community. Philly Tech Entrepreneurs is a free community that hosts monthly events, both in person and virtually for individuals in the Philadelphia area. My background is similar to Seth's, digital marketing, SEO, content, website development, and design. But my podcast is primarily connected with the Philly Tech Entrepreneurs community, where once a week we interview a member of the community, kind of highlight them, what they're working on. We call it the Philly Tech Connect podcast. It's not as old as some other podcasts are. I've probably been doing it about 6 months. However, I've been a guest on podcasts for quite a while as well. So happy to share, what we've learned. And I guess I will hand it over to Alfred to introduce himself.
Thanks so much, Dave. Yeah, I'm Alfred Poor, and as Seth mentioned, one of my projects is the 75% solution. It's truly a passion project. I help executives, but especially founders of startups, make the impression in their online meetings that they'd like to make if they were in a boardroom or on stage, helping them be more intentional about the impression that they make. As for my background, I've been a professional keynote speaker, long history in technology, starting with 20 some years writing for PC Magazine, and particular strengths and interests in the health and medical, health tech kind, wearable and mobile device technology sphere. But through all that, it's taken me on a number of adventures and online experience, including podcast. I've had my own podcast for over a year. That I'm not currently doing it, but doing it every, I think it was almost weekly for a year. So it's a deep experience there. And I also have a lot of experience being a guest on other people's podcasts. So I've got the technology perspective, I've got the host and the guest perspective. So hopefully I can contribute to the conversation today and give you some advice that you'll be able to put to use. So Seth, where do we begin?
All right. So actually real fast, I forgot to actually mention my podcast, kind of like what the, I do Entrepreneurs Enigma. That's the latest podcast. I've had a bunch of podcasts out there, but Entrepreneurs Enigma interviews entrepreneurs on their journey. I think, Don's been on it, Alfred's been on it, Dave's been on it. Bill should get on it at some point because, he's an entrepreneur. So that's the thing. We kind of can swing it both ways here and talk about, how it's not just, entrepreneurs. I always want to say extrapreneurs, but entrepreneurs, because you can be inside a company and be very entrepreneurial and contribute to the bottom line of that company because they allow you to venture out and do stuff, which I'm sure Bill can talk a lot about that stuff because his bank, I'm sure, loves how active he is. So let's start off with this. Starting a podcast. Why did you guys want to start a podcast in the first place? Let's start with Dave.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main questions anybody would ask. Why would you want to? Why should you? And maybe why shouldn't you as well? These are all kind of separate questions that probably should be handled individually. But me personally, The main reason that we started a podcast at Philly Tech Entrepreneurs was probably twofold. Number one, it was an outlet for me to connect with community members. And I see this a lot with people that run podcasts just in general for their businesses. They kind of see it as a way to connect with their target market. Maybe they're inviting agency owners or CEOs or entrepreneurs or whomever it might be, but it's a very not I can't think of a better way than saying non-aggressive, like a non-salesy way to start a conversation with somebody. Everybody is on such a heightened sense of what's the rub, what's the angle, what are you trying to sell me, that to actually offer someone to be on the podcast and say, hey, would you like to sit down and have a chat for 30 minutes? It comes across as generally very inviting, and you're kind of offering them value, you're offering them their platform, but in turn, you're also getting the opportunity to spend 30 minutes with maybe your target market. So the main thing was for me, like I said, I want to get to, I run this community, Philly Tech Entrepreneurs. It has hundreds of members. I don't have the time to kind of meet with everybody, but I want to kind of connect on a deeper level with as many as I can. So if I'm talking with at least one person from the community once a week for 30 minutes, that's a great sort of way to connect with the community. Outside of that is the content that you're basically creating that you also then get to give value to the community. Obviously, a lot of people enjoy listening to podcasts, and that's their main medium for consuming, information, things like that. And so we thought at Philly Tech Entrepreneurs, this would be kind of another way to bolster the community's kind of educational arm. A lot of community organizations don't have a podcast, to be honest. In fact, I think we're maybe one of the few in Philadelphia that I can think of.
You're the crazy.
Just because I don't know, what's a bad idea or something. So anyway, we decided to kind of to kick it off. And it's been great. It's delivered on both of those fronts. It's been over 6 months. I've been able to connect with 30 to 40 people from the community and keep going. And every week we could put out some content that allows someone with some specialty knowledge, whether it be legal, finance, growing a startup, HR, whatever it is, to kind of talk about it. So that was our main motivations. What about you guys?
I mean, Alfred, I'll let you talk and I'll speak on it too, but I want to hog the mic.
Sure. So actually I started my podcast for exactly the same reason as Dave described.
Me too.
Basically, when I created my podcast, I didn't care if anybody ever listened to it. That wasn't the point. And I think buried in there is a really important message. And that is, you really need to understand why you want to do a podcast, right? What do you want to get out of it? Is this, you're trying to deliver something to the audience, something to the guests? How does that fit into your business plan? Because you're going to invest, even if it doesn't cost you much money, you're going to invest a lot of time in recording and producing and getting guests and putting it all together. And it can be very worth it. But my advice is, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, to follow the advice that is apocryphally has been attributed Mark Twain's comments about exercise. He said, he didn't say it, but it would have been nice if he had. If I feel like exercising, I find that if I lie down for 15 minutes, the feeling will pass.
I love that.
And so for me, that's the acid test. If after 15 minutes you still want to do it, then go ahead. Yeah. But for me, I wanted to invite people who had access to an audience that I wanted access to. And so by inviting them on as a guest and having a conversation with them, I became somebody who they knew. We engaged, they got to know who I was a little bit. There was an opportunity to build trust. And from that came opportunities to cross promote, which then allowed me to build my list based on theirs. So that made business sense for me. But I'm not doing my podcast anymore. And for me,
too much business.
Well, right, exactly. But for me, I get almost all the benefits that I want out of being a guest.
Yeah.
Without having to do all the scheduling.
We'll touch on that too. We'll touch
without
on that
having
on the flip side. Yeah.
To spend all that time. And so that's why I say start with what you want as the outcome, and then decide whether or not having a podcast or being a guest or whatever is going to be the best way to get there.
Love that. I mean, honestly, I think we're seeing a trend here. It was gonna be an Alfred. I saw Entrepreneur's Enigma up as a pandemic project because mainly because I wanted to get in front of people that I wanted to talk to. I mean, selfishly, I kind of wanted people to listen to the shows, and people do listen to the shows more than I'm even aware of. And people are like, "I love your show." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you actually listen! Wow, I feel bad for you," kind of thing. But I do it because I have a reason to reach out to people that I would not normally have a reason to reach out to. Sorry if you hear the dog bark in the background. It's nature of it. Oh, good mic. That's another thing. Get a good mic because then you don't hear the dog in the background. Anyhow, the idea that I had with Entrepreneurs Enigma was I was to interview entrepreneurs because they were kind of one of my set of people that I wanted to talk to and be in front of and whatnot. And it also gave me a reason to reach out to people like Rand Fishkin, who was the guy who founded Moz. I had Guy Kawasaki in the program, which was a real fluke, but gave me a reason to reach out and say, "Hey, would you be on my show?" And then they're taking the other side of things, which is like what Alfred's saying is they're using my network and my platform to promote their thing as well. So I'm getting them on my show. I'm getting to talk to someone who I normally would like say, "Hi, can we talk?" Like, no one's gonna like time's money. But if I can provide them value, they're on my show and I'm getting the value, they're getting the value, and that's all great. So let's go talk about a little bit about like the flip side is, I mean, I know a lot of us are also been on podcasts and find that it's valuable to be a guest sometimes. And sometimes you got to evaluate that as well, is that maybe just being a guest and collecting your podcast episodes of your story is great. And I'll tell a quick little story about this. So in perplexity.ai, I typed in Entrepreneur's Enigma and I said, "What is it?" And it gives me the whole verbatim of who I am, what I do, and all that stuff. And then below there's follow-up questions in the AI saying, "Well, who is Seth Goldstein? And what's he doing?" And I started digging into following the rabbit hole essentially. And apparently my podcast guesting had expanded the breadth of my own podcast. So that's really cool. Let's go to Alfred, then we'll go to Dave on this. I mean, Alfred, how have you found the podcast guesting space? I mean, like, what's your tips on guesting on podcasts?
Well, I think one of the things is that hosts have a hard time finding enough guests.
Yeah.
And so if you're a good guest and you match the content that they want to deliver for their audience, it's not so hard to land a guest appearance. You know, it's like other things, you know, you need to have a profile, you need to be able to send them a short pitch. This is what I can talk about. This is what I know about. This is, you know, I've seen that you've talked to so and so and so on
your
your
research, do your homework. Yeah.
Listen to the other episodes and say, you know, I think, you know, I would be a good match for your show because I would have this point of view that goes along with that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, you got to do your homework first.
Absolutely. Dave.
I personally love being a guest on podcasts. I try to be on as many as will take me. There's no podcast too big or too small that I feel, you know, that I'd love to be a part of. It's been a part of my kind of branding. I hate to call it strategy because that's almost giving it too much credit, but well, for lack of a better word, we will say strategy for years now. I definitely don't want to hijack the conversation into a different area, but if you think about, you know, where marketing trends are heading, I feel that personal branding has just become more and more a must-have instead of a nice-to-have in today's day and age, and as a way to kind of market your brand and sell your products. You need to be out there. Attribution is very difficult. It's always really hard to know, you know, where people found you from. Often they maybe have kind of come across you in different sources, but I have absolutely had people send me an email and say, "I heard you on this podcast. I'd like to talk about your services." It has happened more than once.
Yeah.
And those sales honestly were easier than many others that I have tried to approach, just by nature of the fact that this person had already spent 30 minutes talking, you know, listening to me talk, hearing about the way that I think about things. And, you know, apparently they liked it enough to kind of get in touch. So, I mean, it's not a regular occurrence. Don't get me wrong. It's not like every day someone's beating down my doors. "I heard you on this podcast. I want to buy your stuff." But
They should be. They should be.
Yeah, what are you going to do? But so, yeah, I would say, you know, I've done a mix of sometimes a deliberate outreach campaign to try to get on podcasts, but often us also very organic. It just kind of you get inbound invites because often people's approach to finding guests for their podcast is by looking on who's been a guest on another podcast, right? So if you're on one, you're in the ecosystem. People go, this is a guy that likes to be on podcasts, or a guy or a lady, and let's bring them on to mine. So yeah, in short, I highly recommend it. You draw the line where you want to draw the line, which is if you feel there is a certain target market that you're, really going after, or a certain size or whatever it is. Mine is very loose. I just like to kind of be out there as much as possible. But I would say it's been as much value as having, I mean, it's a different sort of, I guess, mindset to having your own podcast. Obviously, like both of them have some overlap in terms of personal branding and things like that, but there's a bit of a different kind of degree of control with having your own versus being against someone else's, right?
Absolutely. I'm gonna give out a tip here too. There's a service called, and there's a bunch of services out there called like that do this similar thing, but Podmatch is a great way. It's kind of like Tinder, or in my case, JDate or Christian Mingle or any of those other dating sites where they match you up with podcasters, match up with podcast guests. And I suggest investing in both sides of it. And if you're going to do, I do a podcast, and I'm also like to be on the guest side. And it's really neat. I think I paid a total of $30 a month for it. I think it's like $6 a month. Don't quote me on this, but it's like $6 a month if you're just in the podcast side, because you're providing value to the ecosystem. And the real magic is being on the guesting side. But you can set up your profile on there and put up headshots and stuff like that. And it's really neat. Like when I run out people, which I really don't have trouble running out, because once you're out there, and I have like 230 episodes of Entrepreneur's Enigma, like it's insane. And because I've been doing it for 3 years, and I do them weekly, and at some point I was doing them twice weekly, which was insane. Don't do it twice weekly unless you really have nothing else to do with your life, because it's really tough. But I found that people now find me and are pitching me in my email. Also set up a separate email address for your podcast. It's helpful because you'll get bombarded. But I find that when I need someone and I don't have someone banging at my door that I'm interested in having on the show, go to Podmatch and you'll find someone who's interesting. And sometimes very bizarre and really quirky, which is even greater. Dave.
Yeah, I'm curious, Seth, with all the podcasts you've done, to talk a little bit about maybe some of the surprises, unexpected results, learnings from doing a podcast. And, Alfred and I can share as well. What would have been counted? I'm sure there's been a few.
Well, the surprise is always, and I always suggest this, is if you should be plugged in via Ethernet if you can. If you can't, reset your router prior to the show if you can, because then you're getting fresh. I'm not sure if there's anything technical about this, and Alfred, you can correct me on this, but you're getting fresh Wi-Fi. You're not getting packet loss technically. I'm not sure if it's scientifically known or just subconscious that I reset my router, everything should be working just fine. I'm not sure if there's any logistics behind that, but also I've also found with podcasts, you just have to roll with it. This is not NPR. We're not trying to do public radio. We're not trying to talk like Marty Moscowane if you're in the Philadelphia area. You're not trying to talk like Garrison Keillor, especially not Garrison Keillor. But like the idea is that you're trying to present good content. And off the rails, honestly, a lot of people like podcasts because they're not buttoned up. They're fun. They're quirky. My podcast, I wing it. I mean, granted, there's a little background with me. I'm a former professional journalist, so I kind of know where I'm going to go with things and track it that way. But I generally wing it. I have 3 regular questions I ask every guest, and then before that, we talk for 10-15 minutes prior to those 3 questions. And I can fill 15 minutes up with them talking, which, I'm a talker, but I can get them talking for 15 minutes about stuff. And Don can, Alfred and Dave can all, attest to this, and Bill will at some point as well. I can get you guys talking. I don't care how much of an introvert you are. I'll get you talking for 15 minutes. And then we'll go into the 3 questions. So goofs, there are goofs, stuff happens. Roll with it. Just get started. Alfred, what say you, buddy?
So I'm going to put Dave's question to the side for a second because you touched on a couple points that I think are really, really important. And that is there's no one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You and I are wing it, comfortable, go wherever the conversation goes. Okay. But that's not for everyone. Okay. And whether you're a guest or host, you need to understand what the style is of that particular program. Okay. Because you will encounter hosts who say, here are my 5 questions. We are going to go through these. Bing, 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 bing. I don't want you to spend more than 2 minutes on any one of them. And we're going to finish 15 minutes exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, very controlled, very formulaic. And that's what they're comfortable with. And that's what their audience likes. And that's so you need to be aware of what the rules are for different podcasts. And if you're the host, you get to make the rules. But so understand what you're going to do. Within that, I mean, you've got a lot of decisions to make. One of the big ones is how long is your podcast?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there are some of the huge, big political panelist type ones that run for an hour or more.
And they're hard to get through.
I would argue that for most people, an hour-long podcast is probably not a winning formula, unless you're a celebrity in some area or not other. Yeah, I've had podcasts that are short as 10, 12 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on podcasts that are half an hour, you know, or more. I think personally, I believe that shorter is better.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at YouTube, if you look at TikTok, you look at, you know, attention spans are shrinking, and it's a whole lot easier to get somebody to listen to 3 10-minute segments than it is to get them to start 1 30-minute segment.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I would keep that in mind. But yeah, so for me, the surprise is, and this is whether it's a podcast or you know, live interview on stage or radio or whatever, I'm always thrilled when the discussion goes someplace that neither of us expected it to go.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Where we discover something that's, you know, an interesting concept or a thread, and that happens a lot. But you need to be relaxed. You need to be in the flow of it, and welcome the possibilities that come up. So it's a mindset thing.
Absolutely.
And if your mindset is, I want to talk about my company and how it's great, and you know, give you the pitch on how wonderful it is, you're probably not going to have a great interview. You know, if you can talk about the bigger issues, you know, what is the problem that you're solving? Why is that important? How does that affect people? That's probably a better place to start. But Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, on the topic of length, we're on the same page, Alfred. You know, our podcast is around 15 minutes or so, and usually we budget around 10 minutes prior to the recording just to kind of talk with the guests and kind of feel out the storyline and the flow and things like that. I knew going into it that I wasn't thinking of my podcast as going to be, you know, the thing, you know, where I wanted to just invest a ton of time, effort, resources into it. There are exceptions, obviously. You know, you have people like a Joe Rogan or a Tim Ferriss who will do these like 2-hour-long marathons. But for them, like their podcast is probably like one of the biggest things of their brand. And they also had a massive brand before they even started the podcast, right? And so they can kind of command that level of time. But I think for, you know, more of our mere mortal type people such as ourselves, you know, kind of keeping it short and sweet is where to go. You know, I kind of went in the podcast thinking that, hey, I kind of want to wing it a little bit like Seth. I wanted to see where the conversation goes. PTE is a relatively diverse community, people with a lot of different backgrounds and expertise. Is that I didn't want to have a podcast where there was like a set couple of questions that everybody kind of got asked. I just kind of wanted to say, hey, I want to like just see what I think is interesting about this person and just ask some questions I want to know the answers to. But one of the surprises I have found is that many people do ask or like to have an understanding of what they're going to be asked. It sounds obvious and logical, but as someone who's been on a lot of podcasts, and sometimes I get the questions beforehand and sometimes I don't, and I'm always fine either way. It's not something I expected. But I have definitely had, a number of people kind of be like, hey, what are we going to be asked? And I think especially, depending on, the guest, if they're like maybe like a C-suite level, they kind of want to come in prepared, right? They want to know what they're going to be asked. They want to make sure they look good, not just visually, but that they sound good, that they sound articulate. And part of that is just, that they've kind of reviewed the questions, they've approved them, and they've sort of had some time to think about what the answers are going to be. So, to the extent that we could, wing it, like we have, but I have run into that where, as part of like making the guest feel as comfortable as possible, we've started to kind of send out a few feeler questions, a priori.
Yeah. My role, being the former journalist that I am, you do not get my questions ahead of time. But I mean, I will never give someone the questions ahead of time. I also qualify it with saying that I'm not I'm Sawyer. I'm not going to grill you. It's to make you the question. That's my general rule of thumb. Is there's nothing wrong with giving people questions ahead of time, but it can be to a point where it's not as flowy and stuff like that. So I will generally say, if you want to hear the 3 questions I ask every time, listen to the podcast. But the first 10 minutes are just free flowing. Don put a good question in the chat here. Thank you, Don. Do people do podcast series versus episodic? And I'll take this one off the bat and I'll go on the horn here. A lot of people do series. A lot of people do seasons as well. I should have done a season. I'm still in season 1 after 230 episodes. Oops, I forgot to change the season number and take a week off. But for the past 3 years, I've not taken a week off. I also pre-record my shows so they come out. So I'm good through August on my shows, but they come out weekly. I think I'm taking my first break on it where our show's not coming out at the end of this month. The 30th is a Tuesday. I'm going to be out of the country, literally in Canada. And my wife's like, you know what? Skip a day. I'm like, I don't want to. She's like, they'll survive. And so I put a blog post up, schedule it, saying that this is what's going to happen on the site. So that happens and all that. But I feel like there's a lot of different formats of podcasts. Some of the more fictional podcasts are series based. There are series. They're like, we're going to talk about this, like Serial, for example, was like, we're going to take one story over the course of a season and just talk about this one story and serialize it as the kind of like we used to get comic books, like to be continued. But I feel like the Talking Head podcasts tend to be more season based or just free for all. Like, let's keep going to 230 plus episodes and forget to change the season number. So that forget to change the season number is more me oopsing than anything else, but it is what it is. Alfred,
So
what say you?
So there's actually a door number 3 here.
Oh,
And that is the No Guest podcast, of which there are many. There are a lot of industry thought leaders who want to talk about what they feel they have to share. And this is a pretty common format. I mean, we've been focused on the host guest format, but it is possible to have a podcast where it's just you talking.
Mm-hmm. And mix and match too. Mix and match.
Right.
You can have some
and you can mix and match. But
yeah.
in this case, towards Don's question, you can then break down what might be a 45-minute keynote speech into 3 or 4 short podcast segments.
Mm-hmm.
And and then record them, drip them out once a week, and promote them on social media and give a chance to have people come hear your point of view and what you think is important. So I mean, that is another option. It's not one that I've used, but it's certainly a viable option that's out there.
Yeah. Dave, you have anything to add? Or else we got a Zoom user who's anonymous, but I'm sure they're not that anonymous. They have a question too, but go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're right, Alfred. We kind of do the host guest model. I think the nature of ours being a community podcast just naturally lended itself to. It's not meant to just be about me, but there's a real personal branding incentive to giving yourself a forum to share your insights, your background, etc. If you're willing to make the commitment to come up with new content every week, that's going to be interesting, and that you feel comfortable in talking about that. But this is a great, segue, I think, into this is a question about the audio only, to talking a little bit about the technical infrastructure and decision making that kind of goes into podcasting. Alfred, I know this is a strong background of yours, so why don't you start by sharing some of the do's and don'ts here?
So excellent, thank you. Audio only is a wonderful question, and if you're just starting out, I strongly encourage you to think about doing an audio only podcast. That's what I did for my podcast, because the production is so much simpler when you're not having to deal with video. So it's easier to edit. Now, this is presuming that you're going to record your podcast rather than stream it out live while it's happening. I would recommend that you record them just as Seth has done, so that you can queue them up and send them out at future dates. And, so you can spend a block of time creating programming and then publish them later on a schedule. When you're putting together a podcast, you're going to want to have an intro. You're going to want to have an outro. I urge you to include a call to action in your outro, so that after people have been listening, they know who to call, where to go, how to get the free report, whatever it is you've got to offer. And this is also, with the AI tools we have available now, it's just an awesome opportunity to get an AI generated voiceover, to have somebody else's voice pitch your product, or your report, or whatever you want them to get from you. All can be done very simply, very inexpensively. There's free audio editing, GarageBand on the Apple, Audacity on the Windows platforms. I mean, it's fairly easy without a whole lot of serious learning curve to be able to create a good quality podcast with good quality audio. If you start adding video to the mix, and you're cutting out the ahs and the ums, or there's some point where the guest goes off on a tangent and you just rather just cut that segment, well, it's easy to do on audio. You'll never notice that it's gone. But with video, it's a much bigger deal to make those adjustments. So yeah, I absolutely would urge you to start with an audio only, because you'll have your hands full. Figure out how to automate your workflow as much as you can, but it takes me probably 10 minutes of editing for every minute of audio, something like that. So it adds up.
I do have a trick though.
Yeah.
If I may jump in here. If you use something like Descript, and you put the audio and the video into Descript, and you edit it in text space, because it gives you a pretty bad transcript. It doesn't understand me whatsoever. So it's good. I would not publish the transcript it provides, but it's easy to edit. You can edit the video and the audio at the same time. And one benefit I see that doing video is that you put it up on YouTube as a YouTube video. And yes, you can put up a video with this audio with a screenshot, of like the talkers. I can't speak today, but with the people chatting and whatnot, or your screenshot of the album art for the day or whatever, you can do that too on YouTube, and that's a great way of doing it. A lot of people just do audio with a screenshot on YouTube as well. But Descript saves you time, because you can edit via text, and it gives you audio and video at the same time, so you can then put it up there. But also, video takes a lot of space on your hard drive. Keep that in mind. Is that audio is probably, I think, at most, I mean, if you're going for an hour or two, 25 megabytes, 50 megabytes. If you're doing an hour or two, God forbid, of video, I say God forbid, because I don't think anyone wants to watch anyone for an hour or two via video. They want to walk around if it's an hour or two, and they want to listen to it. But, when you think about it, that's going to be probably 500 megabytes at minimum, depending on the quality of your video. So we got some other questions in here. I'm going to go from the back to the front here. What about paid advertising? Let me jump on this real fast, because Entrepreneurs Enigma is on a podcast network. of a bunch of other other marketers. So we're the Marketing Podcast Network. Getting paid ads other than your own service is tough. I mean, you can do affiliate links and say, hey, go to this. This is, I'm repping for at SEMrush or whatever. Go to my link, and then you get a commission based on if anyone buys through your link. You can do, I mean, I know LinkedIn advertising is very big on getting on podcast networks and having that guy with a really good voice talk about the show, and I'm sure you've seen them across podcasts as well. But paid advertising is a whole nother beast. It's a lot of work and all that. So what say you? Let's go to Dave.
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, is this paid advertising to promote the podcast, or is it paid advertising meaning I want to include adverts and advertisements within my podcast? I wasn't 100% sure on the question. Either way, we do neither. So it's the same answer for both. And I mean, it's a number of things. We easily put we're not there yet, and I don't know if we ever will be to command the audience to be able to go to an advertiser and say, this is why you should kind of pay to be featured here. I will include in our outro like references to my own company, Shortlist, a digital marketing agency, as sort of like a de facto advertisement that is included in the podcast. But we haven't really actively gone out to make an approach. And again, it really comes down to, what is the vision for your podcast? Is your podcast primarily meant for personal branding, or is it meant to be like a direct revenue stream? When I launched it from the beginning, I was very much more in the camp of this is going to add to the personal branding, along with what we do with blogging and webinars and in that type of content creation household. But some people they want their podcast, they want it to be a business, and therefore you have to kind of approach things differently. But I think it's a tough model. I mean, it's just, there are quite a few podcasts out there. It is, you're not early to the market if you're starting a podcast now in today's day and age. And so to kind of, go and be the next, who was the guy, John, who was doing the daily podcast about entrepreneurs. Was it with Seth, Entrepreneur something or other? Entrepreneurs on Fire, who was
John Lee Dumas.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I've been on that show, and it's a great show, and he was like a daily episode with entrepreneurs. But man, that's got to be like 10 years old or something when he was doing that. Now, and at the time he was making like $100,000 a month or something. But it was like this podcast was huge. I don't know where they're at now. I haven't really followed it, but the point being is that it's not. There will be somebody who starts a podcast today or tomorrow and monetizes it well. There always is, but I think it's a hard road.
Let me add something before I go to Alfred. Let me add something real fast. It's very bad form to charge people to be on your podcast. And I know some people do. Don't ever pay to be on someone's podcast, ever. They want you on, they'll get you on. You're helping them, they're helping you. Don't pay to be on someone's podcast. It's not going to get you anywhere, and it's a waste of money. Alfred.
Absolutely agreed. And I'm going to be harsher.
Ooh.
Nobody wants to advertise on your podcast. Nobody wants to advertise on your website. Nobody wants to advertise on your newsletter, right? I mean, you're really happy with your 1,500, 2,500 subscriber list. That's a good list that can be very productive and create revenue for you. But no advertiser is going to, until you add a couple zeros to that, no advertiser is going to be interested in doing anything. So Dave, I mean, you hit on the big ones for me. Use it as an opportunity to promote your own business, be your own advertiser. And there's a lot of good ways you can package that. But the other thing is affiliates. You can have there are lots of affiliate clearinghouses out there. So you can go find QuickBooks or resume companies or things that could be relevant to your audience. And there's nothing that says you can't say, and this episode is sponsored by QuickBooks.
No.
And here's the link. And and use your affiliate link there. Now, the FTC is something to watch out for. If you make it sound like you're reviewing a product like QuickBooks and making it sound good, and then you offer the link, you better say, and
This is a referral link.
this is a referral
It
link,
helps
or
me
we may,
out.
click on this, we may get some money or something like that. Because the FTC for years has been real serious about watching out for that. But just to say, this episode is sponsored by, I think that makes it very clear. I don't think you'd have any problem with that.
They don't
I haven't
mind.
used that myself, but I've considered it.
They don't mind. I found that with a lot of affiliates, they're actually happy as long as they get your business, you get them business, sponsored by, or here's some affiliate, here's some suggested tools that we use. Like,
Yep.
I generally, and let me qualify the fact that I'm on a network that of a bunch of other podcasts who have ads. So my podcast, I wouldn't say is like the biggest thing since sliced bread, and they're advertising just on Seth's podcast. There's 55 podcasts on the Marketing Podcast Network. You buy a spot on the network, you're on all of our shows. So it is a bulk buy. That's why LinkedIn is advertising on my podcast. I did it more for the fact that, I get maybe $300 every 3 months, like $100 a month on these ads. It's not a moneymaker. But I'm on my marketingpodcast.net. Don is in this. He put it in the chat there.
Yep.
But it's a great way to show some legitimacy. Like, hey, LinkedIn's advertising my podcast. More people want to kind of be on it. But you gotta take it. It's what they're gonna sell you. Also, if you're a 15-minute podcast, you don't want more than one ad.
Right.
You want your bumper, you want your front, you want your end, and you want your ad in the middle. Great ads in the beginning, whatever. My rule is if you go over 22 minutes of chatting with the person, I put 2 ads in. This ad and just at the mid roll, because I'm like, fine, you're gonna it's gonna be a 25, 30-minute podcast. All right, 2 quick ads won't hurt anybody. But if it's 15 or 12 minutes, like I will, anything under 10, I don't put a mid roll in because it's too short for an ad. So that's my rule. So,
and again, it's part of what's the business plan? What is your goal out of this? Is that $100 a month going to make it worth interrupting what you're doing with an ad, or are you going to get more money other ways that you don't have to, you don't have to interject?
It's not my be all end all. It might be all end all, sort of what Alfred does, where it's like, I want to meet this person. Here's my reason to reach out.
Yep.
And I think, Dave, you can speak to this too. You have this great community of people, and you're like, my God, these people are freaking fantastic. I want to highlight these people. I also want to have a reason to not just be their community leader. I want to find out what their story is. So maybe there's a synergy there. So, if you elaborate a little bit more.
Before we run out of time, I want to jump back up to one of Don's questions.
Oh, do that. Yeah.
Where he's talking about repurposing. So you talked about Descript. Say it carefully so everybody hears it. Descript is an absolutely astounding video editing tool.
It's $30 a month and well worth it. Yes.
You edit it like you're editing a word processing document, and it fixes the audio and the video automatically, which is just amazing. Along the same lines, there are AI-driven utilities out there, which I've used a couple of, that you give them a 15, 20-minute video, and they'll go in and automatically pull out 6, 8 little clips, 1 to 2 minute clips that they identify as being, sort of the nuggets of information from your podcast. They'll format it in vertical if you want a TikTok reel format, do it horizontally if you're putting it up on LinkedIn or YouTube or those kinds of things. It will put the captions on the screen, different formats. You can, a whole lot of design things, and it's all done automatically. So 10 minutes of effort, you've got 6, 8 of these clips that you can then repurpose on social media. You can do it in marketing stuff. Unfortunately, I can't pull up any of the
I did. I put them in the chat. I put them in
titles.
the chat for those.
What is it?
I put them in the chat for people who are watching live. Minvo Pro is one. Swole.ai.com is one. Castmagic.io is one.
Yeah, there are a couple others. There's a lot of.
Even the Descript does it now too. Embedded in Descript. What a surprise!
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so yeah, AI has made it possible to have some really powerful production team behind you just from your computer. It's awesome.
Also, some of You also, some people, Don said some of the free streamers have some unwatchable content with three ads playing. Well, you got to think about when you're streaming your ads and you're on something like YouTube or you're on Twitch, especially Twitch is horrible for this. Is that the Twitch needs to monetize their system, and they'll hit you with ads every 5 minutes. And you got to keep in mind that when you're streaming live, the platforms you're reaching out to, or sometimes they're monetized and they're not monetized. Be aware of that. Always download your content later and put out put it out on a separate feed without their ads that you're not getting compensated for. So I was just grabbing them. It's marketingpodcasts.net. My fault. It's in the chat now. So shall we wrap this up and take questions from people? Unless you guys have something else to add. I mean, you guys are, Alfred, sure it can go on for a while with all the tools and stuff. So
I would just like to say,
yeah.
I just want to add that, early on you said, get a good microphone.
Yes, absolutely.
And to me, that's really the crux. I mean, when I work with my clients, the three fundamentals are: you need to be seen, you need to be heard, and you need to minimize distractions. If people have to struggle to hear you talk, whether it's on a podcast or on a stage or, in a meeting room, if they have to struggle to hear you talk, if they have to struggle to see you, they're going to get tired. That's really tiring work, and they're going to give up.
They're going to tune out real fast.
Start checking their mail. So, it's not limited to online, but so getting a good mic and
not that expensive.
Spoiler alert, the one in your laptop, the one on your webcam probably is not going to cut it. I mean, the gold standard is the Blue Yeti,
or the Shure MV7s.
And these cost less than $100. So it's not a budget buster to get it. It's USB, you plug it in, it's, you can get great sound. But absolutely be intentional about how you're going to come across, how your video looks, how your audio sounds.
Also lapel mic, because you saw what Alfred did. He did a little magic trick there. He held up his mic and it didn't make any noise when he picked it up, because he's using a lapel mic too. Lapel mics are great, but if you have long hair, be aware of that and put your hair behind your shoulders so that it doesn't rub against the lapel mic.
I probably went for 8-10 years with this, and it was great. And
it looks good too, honestly.
So a lot of people want to have a podcast with a great big old microphone, big Shure microphone sticking in on a boom so it looks like radio, and they're real cool. For me, my intentional choice is I don't want that. I don't want the microphone in the frame. I want it to disappear. So that's why I worked to the point where I could get a lapel mic that would work.
And find a good lapel mic. Invest in a good lapel mic. Don't get one for $20. Spend like $100 on a Rode one or something like that. That is worthwhile. Also, I can't say this enough. I'm not wearing headphones right now, and I'm guilty of this in the podcast. Echo cancellation is really good now on these services. But headphones, if you are having issues, put headphones on. Put cans on. Have a pair of, I had them somewhere. I should have my prop ready. But like a pair of headphones like what Bill has, maybe without the boom mic, but have a pair of cans on your head is great. Even if you use your AirPods, and but don't use the microphone in the AirPods, just use it for your ears. That will make it so that your computer speaker, everyone probably heard my calendar beep that we're on the podcast over the microphone. It will not pick that up because it's on the headphones. You're hearing the beeps of your computer, but the people aren't. So consider the listener more. So Dave, anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think the main thing I'll just my sort of parting message here. I think a lot of times when we think about things, podcasting, blogging, whatever it is sometimes this pressure of feeling like, oh, we need to do this. I can't be running or growing a business without a blog or a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever it may be. And to a degree, it's hard to grow a business where you're not doing any marketing at all. You probably need to be somewhere, but you do have to kind of had that conversation with yourself about whether or not you actually enjoy the process. Do I actually running, being a host of a podcast? Do I actually enjoy having these conversations with people? If it feels like pulling teeth to you, if it feels kind of like a grind, if you think, I'm only doing this because I think I have to be, or it's necessary to grow my business, it's just not really going to work out because it is work. It's not a monumental amount of work, and there's a degree of, you get out what you put in. You can put in less, you can put in more, but you can't really put in zero. And so basically, I wouldn't say you have to feel like that it suits you, that it suits your personality, that you're someone who likes to be chatty with people. I think you can probably tell just listening to Seth, Alfred, myself, that's kind of in our
We're
nature.
extroverts, yeah.
And so that's kind of why we're here on this panel today. But that's not for everybody, and if it's not for you, that's fine. You just have to find out what is for you and do that.
Also think about the seasons are good, because if you do, let's say you say, I'm going to have 12 episodes of the season, then take 3 months off. As long as people know what to expect, like people know that I'm not going to do seasons apparently, and I was worried I'm going to miss one show, but missing one show is not a big deal. But if you think, all right, I'm going to die out, it's better if you think you want to go the long haul and do 230 episodes and not be as nuts as me, not change the season number. Do 12 episodes, take a month off, record some shows during that time so you have a buffer. So I couldn't do these episodes weekly if I didn't have people scheduled out weeks after weeks after weeks out, because it's not sustainable. I got to run a business. I got to actually make money, not that $300 every 3 months. That's not going to pay you for anything. That's kind of like a side thing I get. But when you think about it, do seasons, pace yourself, and then let's say one season you do 12 episodes, next season you forget, you do 50 episodes. All right, fine, but at least people know that you do seasons, and you're gonna take a break. And you can even say on the last episode of the season, say, all right, we're gonna take a break for a month, and we'll be back. Follow us on social media when we come back and stuff like that. You can, but then I would say, if you're gonna say you're gonna be gone for a month, come back in a month. Plus or minus a day. So should we take questions? Bill, Don, Alfred, everybody?
Well, I've been sniping a few of the questions in the chat
Yeah, exactly.
as we've been going along. So
I did put a resource in there. It's a podcasting 101 ebook that I put together real fast of my knowledge after 10 years of doing it. It's up in the chat. If you want it, you can always email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll send you the link.
and I'll just point out that I just popped up my little checkerboard thing here, and that would take you to my schedule a chat with me, book a chat with Alfred. So
fantastic. Yeah.
If anybody wants to follow up on this and have a one-on-one and explore some of this further, I would be more than happy to have a chat with you. So
I'd love to chat with people.
If you can grab that, but even if you can't grab it, I'll put it in the chat, but it's book a chat with Alfred. So very simple.
Love it.
And I think we probably could promote some of the members of the audience if they have any questions that they want to ask directly. So I'm not sure if that's the case, audience. If you want to
just raise your
throw
hand.
your name in the chat, raise your hand, and then we'll see if we can get you promoted.
Well, we got San Eve. I think it's San or Sam. We'll find out. San, you're on the air.
Great. Hi. There's been so many
You're on
good.
mute.
Oh,
Okay.
really? You can't hear
No,
me?
we've got you.
Okay.
We hear you.
Yep.
Okay. There's been so
No,
many.
You're fine now. You're fine now. Yeah.
Okay, good. There's been so many really good links put in the chat and, information that's really useful. However, with the settings that you've created for this particular Zoom room, we can't save it, we can't copy it, we can't do anything with it. So wondering if you could either somehow capture it and email it to us, or maybe for the next session, kind of change the settings so that it's like a meeting rather than a webinar, so we can
I
save
have
the
an
chat.
idea. We will post. I will grab one of us will grab them. I'll have Bill grab them and throw them in the invite of the
Mhm.
LinkedIn. We'll have it in
Okay.
there. Would that work,
In-
Bill?
I mean, I didn't come through LinkedIn, I came through Eventbrite,
Oh, you can
so
throw Eventbrite. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
it's
Let me see what we can
working.
do here.
Fantastic. So yeah, we'll pull those links out and we'll
Yeah.
get them to you. There is
Yeah,
definitely definitely different ways that we could run these Zooms,
Mhm.
and that certainly creates a problem. But glad to definitely put that out there.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So I've got a pro account, so I know all the different ins and outs, and I attend Zoom webinars on a daily basis. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, the webinars are a real pain. But the meetings, if you like, there's two different names for these kind of Zoom rooms, and the meeting Zoom room is the best, where people can, save the chat and yeah,
Mhm.
do all sorts of things. We can unmute ourselves and speak, that kind of thing. So it's more interactive and more enjoyable for the participants, I think.
All right,
Than,
we'll play with it. So I think
Yeah.
it might also be
Thank you.
it might also be a link in the webinar chat where when we start up, we can possibly enable copy and pasting. 'Cause I know we want to have things as webinars for
Mm.
these things, but we'll figure it out. So yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I guess not. I guess we covered a lot of things. I mean, I guess if you want to find us all on LinkedIn. I know we're very prolific. I know Alfred puts content out a lot. Dave puts out content out a lot. I put out too much content. So beware that if you hit that bell, I'm going to be in your stream multiple times a day in LinkedIn just because I put tons of content out. But be aware, I warned you. So shall I wrap things up, Bill? With a nice little bow.
Yep. I think that's good. Thank you all very
Oh.
much. So you can, Seth, feel free to wrap it up.
Awesome. So great. So follow Alfred on Alfred Poor everywhere, but on LinkedIn and all that. Dave's over affiliatetechentrepreneurs.com. Alfred, what's your domain name? The 75%
Which one?
solution.
Oh, I'll put it in the chat. It's the 75%.com.
Okay. And mine, you can follow me at goldsteinmedia.com. You can follow me at entrepreneursenigma.com. I'm sorry, entrepreneurs is one of the words that's really hard to spell. I believe it's French. So it's hard. I have to type it all the time, but I have a key command now that does it for me automatically because I cannot spell entrepreneur or enigma very well. So
And Seth, I'll also point out I'm Alfred Poor everywhere. Twitter,
literally, yeah.
LinkedIn, Facebook. So
Dave screws things up every once in a while. Every once in a while, he's David Schneider.
One of the nice things about being an OG here is that got in early enough to get my name on most of the accounts.
There you go. Awesome. And I guess we'll see everyone on the next webinar, which will be follow Founders Institute Keystone on LinkedIn because they're constantly putting new stuff up, or fi.co.
Thanks for hosting, Seth, and Don and Bill as well.
Fantastic. Great to see you all.
How do you end this thing?